Welcome to the podcast of the Political Page blog with commentary from an attorney and entrepreneur on the political and social issues of the day, from a rationalist, libertarian, and often irreverent perspective. This is Political Page, and here's what's on my mind today. Hello and welcome to the blog of the 17th of April 2019. I am having so much fun with this subject. This one is entitled Poop and Paradox, the Blue State Solution. Now there's a theory in literature that there are only 7 basic plots in existence, and Shakespeare developed every single one of them in any number of combinations depending upon each character's point of view. It's just a theory, but it seems to hold true, because in the last 500 years or so, nobody has been able to come up with a plot that isn't somewhere in his plays. And you know what? I'd go further. When it comes to the immortal bard, not only did he nail all 7 plot lines in every conceivable permutation, but in the process, he managed to coin a pithy phrase for every human situation. You know, it's like the founders of the Constitution. The older one gets, the more one stands in awe of how wise and prescient some writers can be. All of human behavior is right there in history and in the 7 basic plot lines of Shakespeare, and there's nothing new under the sun, indeed. And that's a quote from Ecclesiastes, another great source of pithy quotes on the human condition. But I digress. The Shakespeare quote that's coming to mind today is from Hamlet. And if you remember Hamlet, I'm sure you all went to high school and had to read it out loud, when the title character turns to his mother as they're watching a play, sort of within the play, to ask what she thinks of the story. And she answers with the famous quote, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks." Well, Queen Gertrude was really saying that there is no surer indication when somebody is prevaricating and hiding an emotion, whatever that emotion, guilt, fear, love, whatever, than one who so sincerely and over-vigorously protests its precise opposite. Which brings us neatly to the delicious Queen Gertrudian reaction of the blue state sanctuary city progressives that are responding to the Trump threat of dumping, their word, not mine, the illegal aliens whom they insist upon allowing across the open border directly into their sanctuary laps. Watching the Democrats tie themselves into ever more convoluted Mobius strips of self-contradictory bluster, it's just an abject lesson in over-protestation and in the wisdom of William Shakespeare. Plus, it's really, really fun. First, there was the immediate reflexive shriek that putting illegals into their evolved and morally superior cities is inherently racist. Not quite sure about that, but why the people transporting the migrants to San Francisco are the racists when it's the superior San Franciscans who are objecting to brown people moving in next door is kind of left unexplained, but the proposal certainly brought a reaction. It's been described as a, quote, sharp response from the left. I would say sharp response might be more accurately described as sheer panic, but let's not quibble. Next, there is the belated discovery by progressives of fiscal conservatism. Yes. How, they bluster, would Donald Trump pay to run the buses that are going to move people from the border into places like San Francisco? You notice how it's always San Francisco in their examples? Why is that, anyway? Why would those cheapskate Republicans agree to fund that? Well, let's set aside for a moment the unmitigated gall of a party whose 2020 platform consists of wanting to spend $93 trillion so that we can all take trains to Hawaii. Worrying about buying some tanks of regular unleaded for a bus, but I suspect that every conservative in Congress would vote for that. In fact, I would bet that they would give up a substantial portion of their very own salaries, maybe even sell their firstborn children, just to watch those buses roll on into San Francisco. Just a guess. Now, one of the best excessive protests in contradiction, boldly stated in a lot of cases in a single article, both sides together, is the concern about crime. And here's where it gets really Shakespearean. Because you see, what the articles are really saying is that Trump has been an extremely bad orange person because he is now subjecting these Democrat cities to this onslaught of dangerous conditions. But at the same time, after mentioning that, they immediately will turn around and protest, oh so loudly, that it is Donald Trump and never them who would ever say that an illegal alien is a criminal risk. They protest very, very loudly about that. And they protest way too much. For example, the LA Times, and the link is in the blog, you can go read these articles if you want. The LA Times, in one breath, well, many breaths because they're hyperventilating, they simultaneously bleat that, number one, illegals commit far fewer crimes than us horrible native-born savages. But, number two, and here's a quote, no president should intentionally undermine the public safety of communities, especially for political reasons. And wait. Now, you can spend a lot of time trying to wrap logic around the paradox that bringing in people who are less likely to commit crimes than the native population somehow makes the public less safe. But the LA Times isn't alone in that. No, this is popping up all over the place, and it's a hoot because they say two completely opposite things in the same op-eds. For example, there's one that just appeared in The Intelligencer. It's an op-ed, and again, linked in the blog if you want to read it. There is an absolute flood of this petulant invective in this. It's absolutely wonderful. It would make the most screechy genital beanie wearer proud to scream at the sky. Anyway, the headline itself accuses Trump of, quote, governing by sabotage. I don't know what they're sabotaging. Apparently, their cities. Because it goes on to say that he threatens to deliberately inflict harm on Americans who live in areas controlled by Democrats. And what, you may ask, could that harm be? Why, bringing in the undocumented immigrants. Now, apparently that's going to harm them, but within like 2 or 3 different paragraphs later, it also tells us that we have to reject Trump's racist and empirically baseless presumption about the effect that undocumented immigrants have on urban life. Well, I think it's them bringing up the fact that it's going to have a negative impact on their urban life, not Trump. Again, it is just a hoot to watch this. They don't even realize that they've contradicted themselves. They are in such a dither. But then again, to give you another quote, this time it's Emerson, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. So let's not quibble with them on that either. Still, listen, by digging deep within our hearts, it might be possible to find some empathy for the poor benighted denizens of Blue State and Blue City, America. Because their policies, this evolved tolerance and lofty socialist governance, have spawned absolute hellhole nightmares of urban decay, and they have to live there. A viral documentary just came out a while ago. It was done by some local news organization. It takes about an hour, and it's called Seattle is Dying, and the thing went viral. I mean, it ignited a conniption fit on the left by pointing out the rather obvious fact that Seattle is becoming an open sewer of used needles and human feces. New York City is absolutely shocked to their cores that everyone capable of paying taxes from their city is moving to Florida. And believe me, as a Floridian, it bothers us a hell of a lot more than it does New York. Forbes auditors, they're called openthebooks.com. Great website if you want to check it out. They just printed a hilariously disturbing graphic plotting the locations of all the human poop collected from the streets of San Francisco in a single year. It actually appears in the banner of the politicalpage.net blog site for this particular article. You can take a look at it. It's really funny. You're welcome. Now, this leads us to 2 contradictory possibilities, and that's okay because paradox has been a theme of this entire blog, right? Perhaps the illegals, having fled the failing cesspits of Central America, the quasi-socialist republics that have ruined life for everybody who lives there, and walked across the entire country of Mexico with no porta potties, and under the auspices of drug cartel thugs, will arrive in these sanctuary cities, and they will find the feces and hypodermic-laden boulevards of those cities both familiar and comforting. That they can sign up for all the blue state freebies, they can settle down there in perfect assimilation and continue to vote in the Democrats. Or perhaps the poor things will be so repulsed by what they find when they come to a progressive city that those sanctuary streets are paved with something a lot browner than it is gold, that they'll board up, take the next Greyhound, and return to Guatemala. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, either way, it's a win-win. And watching the progressives flail around and try to explain what they mean by what they're saying is a heck of a lot more fun than any Shakespeare comedy ever was. Thank you for tuning in to the Political Page podcast today. Original blog articles, complete with a lot more information and great links to original source material, can be found anytime on politicalpage.net. That's political, P-A-I-G-E, .net.